The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. So excited to be here with you this morning. We're going to do a special parent-to-parent presentation this morning about reading comprehension and how we grow those skills in all of our individuals on the autism spectrum, from very young kids up through teenagers and adults. Because we can, it's a skill like anything else. We can pull that pizza dough and get it stronger and stronger. And you can start today. So, and I think we'll have some fun talking about that. Good morning, Rodney. So thrilled to see you here bright and early. You're here right on top of things. So anyway, I'm Shannon Penrod. I identify as a proud pony. A pony is a parent of a neurodiverse individual. Woohoo! Those are the words that my son and I have chosen to describe my relationship to the diagnosis that he got when he was a child. I know it's not everybody's thing, but that's my thing, and I appreciate whatever your thing is. We are here doing Autism Live on the Autism Network, and our entire mission here is to provide information and inspiration. So we hope that you find what you're looking here. We're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, so many other sites. Our fabulous Chris Desmond has already started to show you some of the different ways that you can be tuning in to watch live and some of the ways that you can listen in podcasts. So we thank him for doing that. I also want to say that our audience, we hope we start with individuals who are themselves on the autism spectrum, right? They are the beating heart of our community. Their voice is critical in all things that we do. We make space for individuals on like all different ages and abilities to be on the show and talk about what their personal experience is, because we know that it's not a one-size-fits-all community, right? So they are the beating heart of our community, but we also welcome everyone who loves those individuals. So sometimes you'll see programming that's geared specifically towards someone who loves someone on the spectrum or someone who's teaching someone on the spectrum. And then we try to make room for individuals on the spectrum to have their own voices heard in some of the, definitely on all the podcasts we do, but then there are some podcasts that we do that's just that, like today's hyperfixation, which you should definitely check out, and stories from the spectrum. Those are only the voices of individuals on the spectrum. So there we go. They don't need my voice in there, right? That's useless. I have to, as we start today, I have to share some sad news that I'm still kind of processing myself, so forgive me. But our dear Clifford Bell passed away this weekend, very suddenly and surprisingly, and it's still catching me up, catching my breath away. You have seen Clifford Bell on the show several times. He was first brought to us, I said when he was on the show in February that Joanne Lara introduced me to Clifford Bell as she was ill and she was getting ready to leave. And I said, Clifford was the gift that she left me. And now Clifford has gone to join Joanne. It's just crazy how people are dropping like flies. What's up with that? But Clifford was an amazing soul. The reason why Joanne introduced me to him was that he had discovered an amazing talent. This young woman, Christina Aguilera, who has been on our show several times, and she's a beautiful, beautiful singer, and identifies as being on the autism spectrum. And Clifford discovered her and said, I want to help you. Clifford was very well known in Los Angeles as, he was known as Lawrence of Cabaretia, because he was the brilliant person behind most cabaret shows, that you could come to him and say, hey, I'd like to do a one-person cabaret show, and Clifford would coach you through that, get you the best accompanist, help you to book the venue, and produce the event for you. So really amazing. And once Clifford found out about autism, Clifford was all in and wanted to help raise money, and was part of an organization that we founded together with another amazing soul that was just about doing theater things and helping to support individuals who were interested in that. So I'm just taken away, but Clifford, I just want to say to you, love you, and what an amazing soul you were, and I know you got your wings, buddy. So if you're interested in seeing more of Clifford or the kinds of things that he did, you can search our website or our YouTube channel. Put Clifford Bell in, and you'll see all kinds of things. But the Broadway world and the Los Angeles cabaret world are just in mourning today, and probably for the foreseeable future. And I must say, he was a huge volunteer for Project Angel Food. Every year he would hold an amazing cabaret that was called Our Name is Barbara, and it would be held on or around Barbra Streisand's birthday. And all of the money that was raised would go to Project Angel Food. And he volunteered for them for over 20 years. So I'm sending condolences to all of them as well, because he will be missed. Okay, but onward and upward, because life goes on, and our kids need a great deal, including reading comprehension. This is an area that we've had guests come on and talk about this before, but I'd never done a top 10 tips about it. And I got to say, I do think it's helpful to get outside help with reading comprehension, because unless you're a reading specialist teacher, it's not going to be your specialty. And it's important to talk with your team and have it in the IEP, that there be goals written in for reading comprehension. But these are 10 tips of things that you can do without being a reading specialist to help grow reading comprehension for your kiddo on the spectrum. Now, what I usually do for these, and I'm going to try to do that today, it'll be hard because I want to talk about each one of them. I'm going to just say what the top 10 tips are really quickly with like a sentence or less. Let's hold my feet to the fire, because I know some of you have to go on with your life. But then I'll go back and talk about them for the rest of the time that we have left. All right, shall we start? Let's do number 1. Read together. Please read with your children and read out loud. It's an amazing thing. Number 2, reread together. Yeah, I know sometimes it can be boring, but pick those books that are really good that they like, and we're going to reread them together. There's a reason why. Number 3, ask questions while you're reading. Ask your child questions. Ask yourself questions. Number 4, make predictions about what you think is going to happen on the next page. It's really fun. Number 5, use visuals whenever possible. If the book doesn't have visuals, you can have your phone and look up visuals. Use visuals whenever possible. Number 6, sequence story events. And you want to do this with all things in life, but say, did this happen first or did this happen first? And get your child to be thinking sequentially. It will help. Number 7, practice on movies. Sometimes you don't have to be reading a book. You watched a Disney video and then ask questions about that. What do you think the main character was thinking? What do you think about this? What do you think is going to pause the video? What do you think is going to happen next? Even if they've seen the movie before, you can do that. Number 8, reward attempts. So if you're asking questions and they don't get the question right, don't be all Debbie Downer about that. Reward attempts, because it helps them to know, hey, I can get it wrong and I can keep learning. Number 9, ask perspective-taking questions. I gave that away just a second ago. What do you think Aladdin's feeling right now? Why do you think he did that? Ask questions about what Aladdin's experience is, and then what is Abu's experience? What is Jasmine's experience? It really helps to be thinking about that. Number 10, start with something that is in their wheelhouse, their interests. We don't want to start working on reading comprehension with something that, a medical textbook, right? Unless that's your child or teen's particular thing, right? If they're into trains, then we're going to start with something that's about trains. If they're into, those My Little Pony things, we're going to start with My Little Ponies. Anyway, so there's our 10. Let's go back to the beginning and let's break this down. I'm saying good morning to Anna and good morning to Nicholas. And please write in if you guys have stories about reading comprehension, how you've been able to get to more reading comprehension, or maybe how it's gotten in the way of something that really meaningful that you wanted to get to. Because here's something that's key is that why are we working on reading comprehension? The fact of the matter is that if you give someone a book and they're able to read the book and they're able to understand what's happening, you've given them everything. You've given them the entire world. They can learn anything. They can go anywhere. They can experience anything if they're able to read and understand what they've read. Now, there are also side benefits to it that when you have reading comprehension, you're going to do better on tests, right? You're going to do better academically all along. But if we're using reading comprehension as a way to teach a whole bunch of skills, we actually can get a bunch of higher cognitive and executive function skills woven in to learning about reading comprehension. So we're doing a lot of things at the same time. It's a worthwhile endeavor. Plus, there's self-confidence, self-esteem, all of these things. So we're starting with number one, read together. I don't think that there's an age that this is inappropriate, right? I know grown, people that are in their 30s that one of their favorite things to do is, I have a friend who she's a wife of another friend of mine, and her favorite thing to do on a Sunday afternoon is to lay on the couch and have her husband read to her, because it's a deeply pleasurable thing, and it's pleasurable for him. Now, can she read the book on her own? Absolutely, of course, but they appreciate it in a different way. And there's something about speaking the words out loud that you hear things in a different way. Now, all of our kids aren't into this in the beginning, right? Let's be very clear about that. But if we make it reinforcing for them, they will want to be read to and with. I always tell the story about how Jem was just a busy pants, He couldn't sit still at all. He was just always here, there, wherever. Unless he was asleep, he was busy, busy, busy. So I always wanted to read with my baby, and we started reading, day one, I was reading to him. But then as he got older and could walk, he was here, there, and everywhere, and I despaired. I was like, he's not going to let me read to him. And my mom made a suggestion. It was this time of year, and she said, let him hold an apple, a cold apple from the refrigerator. I don't know why that worked. I'm assuming that another toy would work. And sometimes he would gnaw on the apple. He would never get a full bite out of the apple. I don't even think I guess he had teeth by that point. But sitting and holding the apple allowed him to sit and have me read to him and then eventually read with him. And here's the thing, that there's nothing wrong with just reading to somebody. And if that's all you ever got to, that would not be a bad thing, because they're hearing words, and if you're doing a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about in a second, it's interactive, right? But if you are wanting to build not only reading comprehension, but reading skills, then eventually you would work with books that are picture books and that would have just one word and the picture, right? Then you would have a sentence, right, that would say things. And I always was taught to follow along with your fingers so that they're looking at the word as you're saying it. Then there are those class of books that I just love that it'll have like two words and then it has a picture there, like the Scooby-Doo books were like that. And the Geronimo Stilton books were like that, which just helps the transition to actually be able to read. Then, there'd be a little bit of dialogue on a book with a big picture. Then we get into chapter books where there might be a picture every other page. And then a picture just at the top of the chapter. So we're progressing along. I really want to encourage you, don't get caught up in we need to be in chapter books right now. Be wherever your child is. Be where they're enjoying the books. And then let's focus on having them understand what this book fully is, like really delve into the text before you move on to other things. So really, you can do this at any age. If you have a 24-year-old, you can sit and read a book together. And if what they like is Geronimo Stilton books, you know what? Everybody else can go someplace else and do whatever they want to do. Let's read Geronimo Stilton books. For now, I'm not saying forever, but let's start where they want to be. and let's read together at whatever place along the way they are. Let's read together, because it's going to create opportunities for you to do the rest of the things that we're going to talk about. If we so often we hand a child a book and we go, okay, you go read. Well, later on, once children get, oh, this is a whole world that I can go to, some of them will go and read on their own and thoroughly enjoy it. We just were with Kobe Bird the other day, and he reminds me of my mother. He never goes anywhere without a book. And you could say to him, what are you reading right now? And he loves to tell you what he's reading because he loves to read. Loves. Now, is that every kiddo? No, but it could get to that point, right? So we read together. Okay, let's go on to number 2. But then I encourage you, reread. Because, and it's nice to have a mix, right? Every now and then you want to put a new book into the mix. But if you have 2 or 3 books that are favorites, or maybe you have a whole bookshelf. For our son, we would always pick 2 or 3 that were from our stash, and we would always get library books that were the new books to see what he really liked. And if he really liked one, then maybe that's what we would purchase next. But there were some books that we read over and over and over again. And those books are brilliant because now we're building an expectation, and we're kind of creating a template for our child where they don't have to guess about certain things. But I really appreciate the Usborne books for small children, that they have the little duck on every page, and you turn the page and you can say to the child, look for the duck, right? Great for reading comprehension, because we're keeping the child engaged. And people go, yeah, but all they're doing is looking for the duck. Yeah, but other stuff is seeping in too, right? And over time, if you're reading the same book, they start to get it. Oh, this book is about Cinderella. It's not just about the duck, right? They might have missed it the first 2 times, but by the 3rd time, maybe they're picking up, or there's like favorite part of the story that they like. One of my favorite books is Go Dog Go. Oh, I love that book. Partially because I love dogs, but partially because it teaches prepositions, which are very hard to teach. I saw this whole thing the other day on Facebook where somebody was showing how to use cupcake papers and M&Ms to put, this is in, and this is under, and this is next to. And I was like, just get Go Dog Go. It has it all there for you. Where's the dog? Is the dog under, over, in, out, beside, between? It's all there in Go Dog Go. But I remember as a child reading the book, and my mother would turn the page, and my favorite part is where there's 2 pages where all the dogs are in bed and they're sleeping except one dog is awake, right? And then you turn the page and all the dogs are up and they're like ready to go, dog, go. But the one dog that was awake all night is asleep in the bed. And I don't know why, as a 4-year-old, that cracked me up. Like that just cracked me up. So I looked forward to it. Every time we would turn that page, I can remember being like, oh, it's going to be my favorite part. It's the dogs asleep, right? So your child will have parts that they look forward to. And that helps us to begin to delve further into, and something we might have missed the first time we were going through, now we're going to catch it. Maybe the first 5 times we read Go Dog Go, we didn't notice that it's the same dog that was awake and is now asleep. But the 5th time, miraculously, we start to get it. So we're going to read together, and we're going to reread books together. And we're going to change it up a little bit when we read about which questions, the things that are coming next. But the storyline will be there so that we can get the framework around it and work on the reading comprehension. Okay, let's move on to number 3. You're going to see how this all goes together. So you're reading a book with your child, your teen, or your friend, right? Your adult child. We got to come up for another word for what adult child is. Because it sounds like, but it's your child and they're an adult. You know what I'm saying? Somebody tell me a new word for that. But we're going to ask questions. The teacher in me loves this because, so we sit and we read the book and we go, what is the dog doing? Or I love the book. I should have gotten it off the bookshelf because we have it here in the studio. I love the book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt, right? It doesn't have the duck from Usborne, but it has other things. So it's a board book, and we would turn the page and I would read what was on the page. And then I would say to my son, where's the dog? Because there's a dog that goes with him on everything. And he would point to the dog. Right. Turn the page. Well, like the 3rd time we read it, I was like, where's the baby? So sometimes I would ask, where's the dog? Where's the baby? These are basic things, and I would help him in the beginning before he knew what a dog was to point, but then he knew what it was, and he loved that. It was a connection between the two of us. Where's the dog? Where's the baby? But then I would ask other things about, where's the tree? And it's right there on the page, and he can just point to it. But that made him successful. I would go, good job. You pointed to the tree. It kept him looking at the page and wondering what I was going to ask next. So we can ask all kinds of questions. And that's an example of when they're really little and just we're labeling things. Where's the dog? Where's the baby? Where's the tree? Later on, we can ask all kinds of questions, about, it could be a quiz, saying, you read the page and then you cover it up and go, so what color was the dog? And then they have to guess and tell you what color the dog was. You're keeping it interactive. They're having to stay engaged. And if you make it fun, not like a dry quiz, but fun, then it will be super. And sometimes that means asking the same question and they get it right every time. Don't feel like that's boring, because that's a win if they're getting it right every time. Okay, let's go on to number 4. So now we move into harder things about predictions. And this is one of my favorite things. And you can do this even with little kids if you're rereading the book, because they know the story. So we look at the page and we go, this is what's going to happen. And then we go, before we turn the page, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the dog is going to do? What do you think the baby's going to do? What do you think the next place is that they're going to go? And then you can make suggestions for the predictions. And I find that the more outlandish your suggestion is, the more fun you end up having. So, I would read something, and let's say Geronimo Stilton was doing something, and then I go, what do you think is going to happen on the next page? What do you think is going to happen in the next chapter? And sometimes my son would, guess and say this whole thing. But in the beginning, he'd be, it was like, I don't know. I can't see the next page, that very concrete thinking. And then I would come up with something. I would say, I think that a huge wheel of cheese is going to smash him flat. And my son would be like, that was just ridiculous to him. And then we would laugh. But as we did this, the more we did this, then he would make some outlandish things. But I'll tell you what happens when we're making predictions. Oh, it's a very complex skill, right? They're having to think of what already happened and jump into the future, which helps them to start thinking about what already happened. It's really kind of clever, right? And I think it keys them into that creativity piece too, because truly anything could happen. One of my favorite things to do, because I used to teach storytelling with college students, right? But I love to be with little kids and tell a story. I have a couple of stories that I just tell all little kids to see what their reaction is. And then we can tell a story together. Well, I'll say to them, pick an animal. And they say a turtle. And I say, okay, and pick an object. This is an old improv game, right? And so, they pick a toothbrush. And so I tell the story of Tommy, the amazing turtle, and his favorite pink toothbrush, right? And a lot of times I'll mess it up a little bit. I'll go, Tommy, the frog, and, when and they'll go, no, turtle. Now, for our kids on the spectrum, sometimes that's not the response. And there's a story that I tell called Wally the Worm. And it's my calling card. You have little kids, I'm going to tell them Wally the Worm. And I was heartbroken and I always get a big reaction on Wally the Worm. I don't know that I've talked about Wally. We've been doing this for so long, I don't know that I've talked about Wally the Worm. But I didn't get the reaction from my son. And I will be honest with you that there was a part of me as a mom, I was like, and I'm never going to get that reaction. And he's never going to understand Wally the Worm, and it's never, But he would always be with me when I would be with other kids, and I would tell Wally the Worm. And I will never forget, no reaction. Like sometimes he would just walk away or not even look, and I didn't think he was into it, right? But I'll never forget the day that we had gone to the doctor and we were driving out of the parking lot, and all of a sudden I hear him in the background. And remember, he didn't have much speech. And then when he started to have speech, it was very unintelligible because he didn't have the oral motor. But I hear him and I can't hear what it is he's saying, and I can't make sense of what he's saying, but he's doing this thing. And I realized he was telling the story himself. I realized I heard a part of it and I was like, oh my gosh, I about had to pull the car over. He had the whole story memorized, the whole story memorized. And this is after probably 2 years of me telling this story when he was there with other kids, never a reaction. So I want to say to you, if your child is non-vocal, your child is non-verbal, this doesn't mean we don't still read to them and that we don't ask the questions. We give them the opportunity to answer. We reward them if they we can say point to the dog, and we can help them to point to the dog, and we reward them. But we don't give up, because they're taking in a lot of information, and we still want to work on that reading comprehension part where they're thinking about the story in a more complex way. So don't give up. Hi, Rosie. So thrilled that you're here. So the prediction thing is really going to be based on where you are. If you've got little kiddos or kiddos that aren't very vocal and you're like, this is too advanced of a skill, you're still going to say, what do we think is going to happen? And we can say, I think they're going to eat ice cream, right? You're still talking it through. They're still hearing that. And they're realizing, I can guess what happens on the next page, even if they aren't able to do it. Model the behavior. Okay, so let's go on to number 5, using visuals. And by the way, I was just saying that, but so I really want you to realize all of these can be used with no matter where your kiddo is on the spectrum and no matter what their age is. It's just at a different level, right? So visuals. If we're doing a picture book, right, the visual's already there for you and you just lean into it and have them point out things. And sometimes there's things to touch on the board book, right? As kiddos get older, there's less and less pictures, but I think we just need to use them more. And then as we get into books that maybe don't have any pictures at all, I don't know about you guys, but whenever my son and I are doing something, we always have our phones and we love to Google together. It's almost like a race about what are we going to do. A million years ago, he was helping me. We were having some sort of a potluck at work, and it was my job to bring a bunch of 2-liter soda bottles. So he was helping me carry them from the parking lot, and I made some sort of an offhand comment about why is the because they were in bags, the 2-liter bottle. And I said, am I weaker on the right side? Because it feels like this bag is heavier than that bag. And my son said, well, of course, because they weigh different amounts. I said, no, they're 2-liter bottles of soda. They should all weigh the same, shouldn't they? And then once we got the bottles put down, we're Googling away. Does some soda weigh more than other soda? Right? And come to find out, like ginger ale weighs different than root beer. Who knew? I didn't know. So we love to Google things. So if you're reading something, it's great to have the phone along and go and look at imagery. Whatever it is that you're looking at or making the imagery. Now with AI, you can say to AI, make me a picture of a zebra in a room with 2 red chairs. And you get a picture. There's something deeply, what is the word I want? It sort of makes it more possible when we have a visual to go with what we were thinking about, right? I don't know whether it crosses the hemispheres of the brain, but it makes it more accessible. I'm going to give you an example of one of the things that I taught in between when I was teaching college. After 9/11, I went back into the public schools to teach 7th through 12th grade, and different years, different grades. But the first year I was teaching 7th grade English, and I had a young man in my class who didn't want to be there, did not want to be there. And he would regularly make it very difficult for anyone to learn and for me to teach. And he had been getting away with this for a certain amount of time. And it wasn't okay with me to just label him a problem child. That just is not in my nature. And this is before I was even pregnant with Jem, right? I was like, I wanted to know what made that kid tick. And what I found out very quickly was that he couldn't read. That he was in 7th grade and people had tried to teach him how to read, but nobody had been successful in teaching him to read. And I'm teaching English, and my favorite thing in the world is that we're going to read and we're going to discuss and we're going to whatever. And we were reading my favorite book of all time, A Wrinkle in Time. And he just, he couldn't handle it. He couldn't sit in his chair. He'd be up, he'd be pushing people, hitting people, whatever. And I was on an investigative journey to figure out what did he need, because this is a great story. And I knew that he would relate to it if we could get him and we would read aloud. But he still had a problem because we were all supposed to be sitting there and reading with books. And then one day at lunch, I happened to be sitting in the faculty lunchroom, and there was the gentleman who taught art who was constantly struggling. He just had a hard time in the classroom, and the kids were really making mincemeat of him, and we were constantly trying to build this teacher up. And one day he made the comment, he said, I just wish all of my students were like, and he said, the student who was causing all the problems in my class. I said, wait, what? And he said, oh, he just comes into art class and he gets right to work and he's just driven because he's a fantastic artist. I was like, okay, all right. So now I knew we had an in because it was his interest, right? And I wanted him to know what was happening in A Wrinkle in Time and be able to sit and listen to it, because I wanted him to learn, but I also wanted the other kids in the classroom to learn, and he was making it so disruptive that they weren't. So next class, I had a box of pastels and paper, big art paper ready. And this kiddo came in and I said, hey, I want to ask you a huge favor. And he was like, you're going to ask me a favor? And I said, yeah, I hear you're an amazing artist. And now he's like, oh, well, And I said, it would really help the other students if we had somebody while we're reading out loud who drew what it was so that there was a picture that they could look at when we're done. This is a chapter book. And so other than the cover and the back cover, you don't have any picture, right? And this is way before the Disney movie came out. And so he became our class artist. And every day he would make these elaborate drawings that were really helpful for the other students to be able to picture, because there's like winged creatures. There's like stuff in this book that you can't possibly conceive of, right? You need a movie team to conceive of. And yet this young man who was an artist was making these gorgeous renderings during the class about something that was happening in the book. So everybody in the class started to understand more. Oh, that's what Mrs. Who looks like. Oh, that's what Mrs. Which looks like. But for that young man, now he had an entrance into this. He was listening because he wanted to draw it. And eventually we got to the point where he could read it as well, because he said to me, I want to know what's going to happen. I don't want to wait till tomorrow to know what's going to happen. So visuals, long story to get to the point of, visuals are critical. And sometimes if you have an artist on your hands, have them draw the visual, but you can do it in AI or if it's already in the book. But it like cracks open the egg and allows us to get in and get a little bit mucky with it. And you're using more of your senses. So visuals are important. All right, let's move on to number 6. Sequencing story events. So this is something we want to work on in general with our kiddos, because we want to teach them about waiting, and you can't work on waiting unless you're working on sequencing at the same time, right? So we have little cards that say, first we're going to do this, first we're going to put on our shoes, and then we're going to the park, right? And we start with things like that. But then once we get into reading, we want to talk about different plot points and what happens. So as you're reading the book, let's say you read a chapter, there's always a discussion afterwards. So, and you're asking questions about what happened, who did this, so on and so forth, right? But then ask questions about sequence. Oh, and act like you don't know. So did they go to the store before they went to the water park, or did they go to the water park first? And in the beginning, your child may not know. And then you pull the book out and go, let's look. Let's look for clues, right? And as they get older and more skilled, you'll see that if you're building this muscle from when they're in with the very tiny board books, like going back to we're going on a bear hunt. You know, if they in the book, I don't know if you know the book, but the whole family says, okay, we're going on an adventure. And then they get to grass and they go, we can't get through it. We can't get over it. We can't get under it. Oh, we'll have to go through it. That's what it is. And then they go swishy, swashy, which I always put a motion and a sound to. And then they go to the next thing, right? And they have to go through all these different parts of the adventure. But if you go through two of them and go, okay, which one do they go through first? Do they go through the grass first, or do they go through the river first, right? And it's okay for the child not to know, but then you go back and go, oh, look, they go through the grass first, right? So we're asking the question, we're sequencing it, we're not expecting it to be right 100% of the time, but we're checking for evidence. This is teaching critical thinking. It's helping them to be engaged. It gives them an opportunity to be right? And it will help as they get older and we get into the more complex things. So we're constantly sequencing things. Now, you don't have to just do this with the book, right? Because you're working on this in their life. And you can use pictures to show, first we do this, then we do that. Really amazing skill to be able to give our kids, to be able to sequence things and to remember, oh, this happened first. So many of you write into us all the time and say, I wish my child, when they came home, would tell me what happened at school. Build this and you're going to hear more about, so what did you do before lunch? They'll have a reference point for it. So sequence story events. There are even some books that you can get, early reader books, that they come with little cards that you can have them put in order and say, okay, so did, Scooby-Doo do this first? Or did they find the masked man first, right? Makes it like a puzzle. Makes it fun. We like it. Great for building reading comprehension. Number 7 is practice on movies and television shows and just your life, right? But I love the idea of, you're watching a movie. And I don't know, this time of year feels like we tend to watch, let's say that you're going to watch Great Pumpkin, the Charlie Brown thing, right? And you watch it every year, but your child's young and maybe they don't remember it. But maybe you're going to watch it twice during October. But it's okay to stop I don't even know, like the streaming. That's what it is. Stop the streaming and say, what do you think is going to happen next, right? Or what happens, does this happen next? Or, did this happen before? What order does this go in? Ask all of the same things. Ask the questions about why did Snoopy just do that? What is he doing, right? Practice on movies because it already has the visual there and your child's already engaged in it. So we're practicing all of these critical thinking things to figure out stuff. It's a great, great way to work on this. And you can do this with your day. So let's say you go on a Saturday and you go on an adventure and you run all these errands and you do all these things. And then in the car, you can say, okay, so what did we do first? Did we go to the grocery store first? Or did we go to the bookstore first, right? And have your child try to remember. You can even have pictures before you go and say, here's what we're going to do. And then you can mix them up and say, what order did we do them in? These are great skills that help because it tunes your child into the fact that that's important. Because I'll be honest with you, it's not really important to them right now, but it's a skill that builds on other things. So there we go. All right, number 8. Reward attempts. Oh, this is so important in everything that we do. I mean, it's not as if your child, I always joke about my friend trying to teach my baby on the first day that he was on the planet. She'd say oscillating sprinkler as if that was a thing that could happen, right? But he can say oscillating sprinkler now because we rewarded attempts along the way. Very important to do that. So with reading comprehension, I don't know about you, but if I have to take a test and I keep getting the things wrong, I'm like, this is silly. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to play. It's not fun. If I'm losing constantly, I don't want to do it anymore, right? Whereas if I'm winning, it automatically is a little bit funner, right? I don't want it to just be fun because of that, but I want for reading comprehension and the questions that we're asking to become things that are enjoyable. It's like a game. It's like a trivia game, right? Isn't it funny that some people are like, oh, let's play trivia. And other people are like, that's a test. I don't want to take a test, right? And it really is a test. But if you make it enjoyable enough, people will want to do it. So we're rewarding attempts. So if you are looking at the board book and you say, find the baby, and the child points and they points at the dog, they go, so instead of going no and closing the book and being done, right? Who would do that? I hope nobody. And instead of saying, no, this is the baby, we want to be as positive as possible and say, that's the dog. That one is the dog. Where's the baby, right? Ask them again. And then you can help them. That's the baby. Good job, right? So we're rewarding absolutely any attempt. We're not being Debbie Downer on anything. Now, I gave that example for a very small child, but, for a child that's older, let's say you're reading a chapter book, you're reading the Harry Potter books, and you ask them a reading comprehension about what you just read, and if they get it wrong, we don't berate them for it ever. We say, oh, you think? Let's go back. Let's check, right? And have them go back in the chapter, and then they'll go, oh, it's this. Oh, that's what the answer is. So we're rewarding attempts. We're not making anybody feel bad about getting anything wrong ever with reading and reading comprehension. It's all good. And we have more opportunities to constantly get it right, but we don't say you're wrong. No. Okay, on to number 9. This is a big one. Asking perspective-taking questions. So perspective taking is when I can think my mind is different from your mind, and what you think is different from what this person thinks, right? And so what we kind of want to do, it's almost like puppet skins, right? That we want to put our arms into the puppet skin and sort of feel like, oh, what does it feel like to be you? And it's a great thing to do with when we're reading. And as I said, to practice this with a movie. I brought up the example of Aladdin before, asking questions like, why is Aladdin doing that? What do you think Aladdin's feeling right now? What do you think Aladdin is thinking right now? But then changing it up and going, what's Abu thinking? What is Jasmine thinking? Look at, freeze it and go, look at Jasmine's face. What do you think she's feeling right now? What do you think Jasmine wants to say to Aladdin right now? Asking questions like, what is Abu feeling right? Do you think Abu is afraid? Or what do you think Abu is feeling? Helps your child to conceptualize that everybody is thinking something different. I have not seen Inside Out 2. I'm dying to see it. Hi, Huma from Pakistan. So thrilled that you're here. I'm dying to see Inside Out 2 because I really loved the first one. Because for the first time we had a Disney movie to show our kids for the fact that you have all these thoughts and emotions that are going on in your head, and they were all numbered and labeled, right, with different emotions. But then we not only saw the little girl's things, but then we got to see what was in her mom's mind and what was in her dad's mind. And I was like, woo, perspective taking visualized. Amazing, amazing tool for our kids. So Huma asks, if a child can read words having hyperlexia, can we get great communication skills? What steps would be? Yes. So there are lots of our kids that are hyperlexic that can read, but that doesn't automatically mean they can understand what they read. I have a dear friend that is her son, but we can work towards that by doing all the steps that we're talking about, that we're reading together. Kiddos that are hyperlexic tend to read and they can say all of the words, but then they're on to the next thing. So what we need to do is, as I was saying about the giving Jem an apple to hold, finding something, whether it's a fidget or something that your child can sit, so that that takes care of the desire to go fast, right? Something that keeps them occupied. Now, for some kids, that's going to be a tactile thing like a fidget spinner or something, or one of those silky cloths that they can put on their leg and they can pet that. Sometimes it's holding a stuffed animal. Sometimes it means sitting in a swing with them so that they're getting motion while that's happening. Everybody's different what sensory input they need to be able to slow that part of their brain down to focus. But using all the techniques that we have here and asking questions, so that maybe even interrupting them if they're reading something and they're read and go, wait, who is it about? Who is it that and then showing them a picture. Who's this story about? Oh, it's about Simba, right? And showing the picture of Simba, so that you're slowing, and then you go, so what did Simba want, right? And they might get a little frustrated that you're interrupting them, but make sure you reward them and go, oh, now I got it. Can you read that to me again? And reward them with things that are meaningful to them, so that we're interjecting and we're causing them to think about what they just read, because they're flying already. And they're like, that's just what you do. You read these words and you say them, but they're not understanding what's happening. Start with something that they really super love. Okay, so ask the perspective taking questions. This is going to help build social skills in addition to reading comprehension. Talk about academically being able to help them. And it's as simple as pointing to the dinosaur and saying, what is this dinosaur like? What do you think he would like right now? And for our kiddos that love dinosaurs, they're going to say, he wants to eat meat, right? And remember, this doesn't have to be spoken. You can have the child you can hold up 2 cards and go, what do you think the dinosaur wants right now? Does he want meat or does he want a plant? And they can point to the one that they think the dinosaur wants. And then last but not least, number 10 is the start with their particular interests. So, kids tell us all the time through their behavior what they like. And what they like changes. So let's remember that. But if there's, I brought up the example of trains. A lot of our kids love trains. And if your child is super into Thomas the Tank, then start with reading Thomas the Tank books. If they're super into animals, find books about animals that they're reading. But always play to their interests. They're going to be much more willing to find out more about what's on the page if it's something that they're interested in, which goes back to the thing that we say all the time. It has to be fun, because we can make it dry. We can make teaching reading comprehension like a stick in Texas dry if we want to. But what's the point of that? If we truly want them to get this skill, then it has to be fair, which means it has to be enjoyable for them. Why would we not do that? I guess is my question. So going back to the very beginning, why is reading comprehension important? Because think of all the skills that we talked about and the awareness and the focus that is involved in and comes into play when we're talking about reading comprehension. It's a lot of skills, a lot of skills. So let's make reading enjoyable. Let's read together. Let's make it as interactive as possible. I've done shows before where I sit here and I read it the way I would to a child, and all the different times, all the different things that you can be doing. But the fun of it, for me anyway, is that you can match that to anybody's skill level. That if I'm sitting with a 4-year-old who can't read and I'm doing Go Dog Go, and I'm turning the page and I'm reading, oh, the red dog is up and the blue dog is down, and I'll go, which one is the red dog? Do you see the red dog? And I'll help them to point, oh, yes, that's the red dog. Is he up or is he down? He's up. And see, I'm gesturing and I'm making a motion and, with my head, and I'm upward inflected. He's up and the other one's down, right? I'm doing all of those things to sort of cement in what's happening here. And by the way, I go forwards and backwards. So I might go to the next page and I go, wait a second, where was the dog who was down? And I can go back and go, there he is, and make it really exciting as possible. But if I'm reading with somebody who is, let's say they're 14 years old and they know how to read, right? They just don't want to, then I'm going to make it a vastly different thing. And sometimes I play the role of the person who didn't understand, and I go, wait, I didn't get that last part. What, can you read that again? I don't understand that. Do you understand that? What does that mean? Why would he do that? Right? And then I come up with silly things. Did he do that because he has potatoes in his ears? And then we laugh. No, he doesn't have potatoes in his ears. Right? But then I go back to them. Why do you think he did that? And because I said something that's ridiculous, that he has potatoes in it, then it's okay for them to guess. I'll tell another story that absolutely floored me. That there was a year when Jem and I, for the summer, decided that we were going to go and visit as many card offices as we could get to. And we went in 2 separate tours, and we were going by car. I didn't want to fly that year. I don't know. But so we drove up the coast of California and saw all the offices on the way, and then went around Northern California. And we listened to books on tape. And the first one that we were listening to was The Martian Chronicles, Ray Bradbury. And it was a really good book on tape because it was almost like radio theater where they were acting it out. And it took us like pretty much the trip up there and chapters. And we would stop and get gas and whatever. And I'd go, what'd you think of that chapter? And we would talk it through and so on and so forth. But we didn't really talk about too much about that one until the book was over and we were getting ready to read the next book. And I said, well, wait, before we do that, so what do you think the thesis? Now, he was in about, I want to say, maybe that was like the summer before he was starting 7th grade, right? And we'd already introduced the topic of thesis, but it was shaky, right? He wasn't 100% clear on that. And remember, this is my child that, years before wasn't able to write his own name, right? But now we're into talking about theme and thesis and, who's the main character and what do they want and how do they change. We're talking, how they have the story beads where you talk about the plot and you talk about the setting and all those things. So we were doing all that stuff. And I said to him, but we're really cracking into theme and thesis now. And I said, what do you think the thesis or the theme of Martian Chronicles is? And he kind of hemmed and hawed and he sort of muttered something and I'm going deaf. And I said, wait, what did you say? And he said, no, because, it's probably stupid. And I said, no. What, tell me what it is that you're saying. You're mumbling. I can't hear you. He said, no, it's just that it seems like it's the 12 deadly sins. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, I know. It's probably stupid. And mentally, I'm going back through the different chapters of the book. And I went, oh my gosh, I've taught this book and I never caught that before. It's like, oh my gosh, you're right. How did I not see that? Like he had that level of insight where I had never seen it. And I'll tell you something, his 6th grade teacher missed that too. That there were a couple of times that he was just ahead. So I know it seems sometimes like our kids aren't getting something, but sometimes we give them these things and they jump 7 light years ahead of us. I told that story once to somebody who was friends with Ray Bradbury and they were like, my gosh, I never got that either. So I guess my whole thing today is don't give up. That these things are like building the Grand Canyon. Start small. Make it fun, make it interactive, but keep asking more questions and ask for more predictions and ask them, what do you think the character was thinking and why do you think he did that? And do it with all kinds of things, not just books, but please, please, please read with your children, I do want to say that so much of today's world for our kids is it's crushing to think with our kids on the spectrum, but so much of the world works on when you're in person. It isn't this way digitally, but when you're in person, being able to stand in front of people and say something with confidence. That I look at so many things, and so many people's jobs are about presentations and things now. It's a very interesting state of affairs. It's how we're teaching things online, is through presentations. And I know AI is going to do a lot of it, but having your children be able to stand even in a room with one person and say, I would like the red one, please, with confidence, would be a huge, huge deal, right? That would be a great skill for them to have. And reading out loud, if your child is reading and having them even read 2 words out loud, helps them to exercise the muscle of I am speaking and I am speaking out loud. And if they do that on a regular basis, it's kind of amazing what they can get to. So there's my tips for reading comprehension, but it's like a puzzle piece that's connected to so many other things. Truly, truly important. I want to take just a second to talk about this week. On Wednesday, we've got an amazing guest who's going to be talking about a new conference that's coming up, that's a virtual conference that you guys might be interested in. I think it's Jennifer Fitzpatrick that is going to be with us from CPABA. I don't know how they're pronouncing that, but it should be very interesting. So that will be really fun. We've got a bunch of self-advocates that are scheduled to be on the show in the coming month, and I'm really excited. All different kinds of viewpoints. It's going to be really, really fun. But don't forget that we are working very hard right now on 2 different things. The toy guide. The toy guide's going to be coming up, so stay tuned for that. But the one that's coming sooner is the All Ghouls Gala. We don't have a promo for that we do. Oh my gosh, because Chris Desmond is the best ever. So take a look at the promo, and then we'll talk about it as we close out the show. So take a look
It's
at
that
this.
time, but I don't have to tell you that. You've heard the calling and tried to bury it deep inside, but some fears can't be ignored. Everyone is going to be there. He'll be there. Probably him too. It would be just ghastly for you to miss it. Don't forget to invite a friend. Run. Don't walk to get your tickets to ACT today's 3rd annual All Ghouls Gala. Tickets on sale now at 3rd annual allghoulsgala.eventbrite.com. See you there. There will be a scream.
I guess I should have given a warning if you have a small child watching, because it has some pretty disturbing things. But how amazing is Chris Desmond? Okay, what does this have to do with autism? It has everything in the world to do with autism, because this is it's an adult Halloween fundraiser for grant money. So if you would like to come, there are tickets on sale right now, but they're going to go fast. So allghoulsgala.com. Go there, get your tickets. The tickets are $125. And I know that that's no small amount of money, but I want people to remember that it is at an amazing location. It's open bar. You're not going to pay for a single alcoholic beverage or any kind of beverage. It's amazing gourmet food, a DJ, dance floor, activities. There are opportunities to spend more money because we're looking for donations, but you could spend $125, eat well, drink well, party the night away with the DJ and, amazing guests. There is a costume contest. You do need to come in costume, but there's a costume contest with great, great prizes. So $125 for all of that, right? And then plus much, much more if you want to spend more money. But fun stuff, very fun stuff. An amazing silent auction. Oh my goodness. But the money that is raised goes to Autism Care Today and the grants. There's an open grant phase right now. Go to act-today.org if you're applying for a grant. Please, if you want to come, get your ticket right now. If you are not able to come, but you want to donate to ACT towards a grant, please do that. Or you can purchase a ticket for someone else to go who maybe doesn't have the $125 to come. act-today.org. We hope that we see you there. We're going to be talking more about that. We are done with today's show. I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. We'll be back tomorrow with Ask Dr. Doreen. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.